let's get rolling. Today's training is how to read a scope of work. There's a lot of resources in the Freedom Forever portal that you can utilize. And this is just an account that had canceled, but I think it's a good one because it's not a perfect setup. There's a lot of variables to look at, and I think it's a good one to introduce you to reading a scope of work. The main thing of a scope of work is you want to get proficient in reading them so that you can avoid delays, make sure you're making the money you were hoping for, or seeing, if there's a surprise adder. Solar is in the construction realm. So if you're going to have projects that you're trying your best to quote and account for all things, it's just not a reality that you can always do that. There's just certain things that are unforeseeable. Old unpermitted structures, a roof that looks good from the ground, but once they get up there, it's a lot older than it looked, or there's a leak or electrical issues. A lot of variables that go into that, but you actually in the Freedom Portal have a ton of information that you can access. So, whenever you get a scope of work, you're going to have one pop up here. It'll say please approve or deny. You can click view details, or it'll always be down here in the scope of work tab. If there's been more than one scope of work presented, you can see the history of those down here. The sold and V11, that's not really useful. Those are like technically not even real scopes of work. They're just taking it how you uploaded the deal. It has not gone through site survey revision or engineering before that. But it looks like there was one on this project that got denied, and now there's another one. This account canceled, so not really a big deal. But things that I might even look for here is what changed over time. How I sold it originally was a 6.65, or how the rep sold it. I'd be looking at, okay, well, why is it 8 kilowatts? So that's one thing to make, mental note of. But up here, if you just want to click view details, it'll say, oh, there's a contingency, meaning even if we're going to approve this scope of work, we have to have a change order done to even get it done. There's certain things that always force a change order. Changing the customer's price is one. The production changing within certain tolerance ranges would be another. You can underproduce by like 2.5%, and you can overproduce by like 10%. So, without a change order needing to be signed by the homeowner, you can technically give them more power for the same price. It's not, hurting the customer at all. But if it's underproducing, they'll only tolerate 2.5% variance, or a change order's got to be signed so the homeowner knows they're getting less power. On this, the layouts right here of what they're proposing, if I was the person that sold this account, then I would know right away, this is not how I sold the deal. And that's explaining why my system size is different. I researched this account beforehand, so I'm not doing as much investigative searching during this recording. But, if I go into Sunrun, anytime you're in Sunrun, you come down and see all your proposals. The deal that the rep approved and signed is this one, the 6.65 kilowatt at 19 cents. Anything above that has like a 001-H or a 002-H, those are called true ups, meaning, don't confuse that with somebody's true up at the end of the year with their utility company. A true up is like a shade modeling, like this is our more accurate post site survey estimation of what that system's actually going to produce with the current layout, with tree heights and roof slopes all locked in, versus, when we quote it, it's just using a satellite image. We're doing our best, but sometimes it's very minimal change, other times there's a big change. So this is one of those that there's a big change. So if I go into here and look at the design plan, that's this, here in your PDFs, you can see the design plan PDF. I've already opened that, but this is the house, and this is how the rep was attempting to sell the deal. So they've got this detached structure, a garage or a shed, and a south east and a southwest facing roof plane is going to be a much more efficient system. You can get them 128% offset with a 6.65, ideally doing this, where now they're saying, well, we don't actually want to go out there to that detached garage. We want to do, wrong image. We want to do this layout. There's multiple variables for that. So one might be, a rule, maybe you didn't know this, but with solar, all of the arrays have to combine into one conduit and then tie into the house as far as the house electrical goes. So anytime you're trying to utilize, I've had reps on frequent occasions say, oh, well, there's a sub panel out in this garage. We'll just put the panels here, tie to the sub panel. We'll put all these panels here. We'll tie to the main panel on the house, and we're honky-dory. Everything's good. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You have to tie all of the solar into one connection point to the house's electrical. So if you're trying to use separate structures, always know that there's going to be trenching to get the conduit from this house to tying into this solar, and then all in one string tying into the house. So, they might not want to be trenching. Maybe the rep didn't account for that. A lot of variables there. But even now, just loading up this roof, you could see, well, we're not even getting them to the 128% how the deal was sold originally. So a lot to consider. But before I come to conclusions, what I even want to do, I want to do a little more research so that I'm accounting for all the different components, all the different variables that are going into this project. So, when I go back, let's jump back into, the scope of work itself. I actually personally like this screen a little bit better. It just gives me 3 columns to see everything. You can view the layout right there pretty easily, right? Here I'm just going to glance to say, well, what's my net PPW on this scope of work? 281. That's not great. It's still doable, but that's probably not how I priced it originally. What are my adders here? Okay, $1,000 distance adder where this job is located. We should have known that when we quoted it. There's always been a module adder, a module in the solar panel. Those are interchangeable words. So that's the adder for the solar panel itself. The multi-plane, we know that there's an adder for multi-planes, but how the job was originally built was with 2 roof planes. Now they've got like 4, I think. So, anything over 2 back then was 330 each. So, those make sense with the proposal they're giving us. And then over here in this column, there's a couple things, especially on a purchase. This is a Sunrun job, but especially on a purchase would be more worthwhile to, make sure to make mental notes. So here where it says solar production, it'll usually give kilowatts and then a percentage. The percentage, don't confuse when it says like offset or percentage of production. Don't confuse that like, oh, we're giving somebody 100% offset, meaning we're offsetting their utility bill by 100%. With this, what it is a percentage of how you sold it. So if you said it's going to produce 12,000 kilowatt hours and they say it's at 85%, that's 10,800 kilowatt hours, something like that, then, that's what it's producing. If that home was using 10,000 kilowatt hours and it's still producing 10,800, they're still getting more than 100% offset. But when you sold it, that was technically at 120% offset, but it's just producing 85% of that number. So that's just helping you understand or not confuse, like, oh man, that dropped all the way down to 85%. No, it's still at like 105, something like that. But that's on purchases. Other things, if it says like a miscellaneous adder in here and it doesn't actually list what it is, almost always right here in this column, it will actually list what the miscellaneous adder is. So it'll say, stucco repair or trenching this many feet or whatever. So, there almost everything you need to see is right here. If you have questions about things like why this, why that, the engineers are utilizing the site survey report. So, when they do a site survey, that file goes into the portal, so you have access to it as well. They take about 300 or 400 pictures while they're out there on site, and there's a lot that you can look at. So, one thing I'm going to be looking at, did they even site survey the detached garage? Maybe the agent, the site surveyor, went out to the house, didn't even site survey that area. I'm going to kind of go through these pictures, and there's some that are showing, proof that, they anchored for safety and all this, that, whatever, to the roof. Make sure there's no accusations of by OSHA that they're not operating safely, or if there's a concern about a roof leak. When they anchor into that roof, they put these metal sleeves with really heavy, sealant underneath and on top, and picture proof of it all. So, these are all things that the engineers are referencing when they're going to build the project. Things I might scroll through to get to, just so you're aware, if you weren't already. They're getting, is this a 2x4? What's the spacing between them? Is there any, signs of leaks or any red flags on this? This is all important information that needs to go back to the engineers. Roof slopes, stuff like that, the electrical box, the meter, its proximity to other things, where might there be space to even put an inverter around here? That's a tight corner. Maybe outside of that picture, there's another spot to see, what's the amperage of these breakers. This is just a 100 amp. I'm actually surprised. Or no, it says it's a 125 max at the top. Let me get down. Okay. So this part is, if you scroll down to where they have everything highlighted in green, see how that roof plane's all highlighted? That's what they site surveyed. So kind of out of the corner of this picture, you can see the detached garage structure. It looks to me like they didn't site survey that. These are things to, a site surveyor can't read your mind. They don't have access to how you built the design. They may ask a homeowner, but if you're going to quote something that's a little outside the generic right on the roof, self-explanatory, and sometimes things that we consider self-explanatory fail to be common sense to somebody else. So, overkill on due diligence never hurts you. Making sure the homeowner is home when the site surveyor is there, making sure they understand you need to tell this site surveyor he has to site survey this garage over here, or they're not going to want to put panels over there. Now it might come back that garage is not permitted, or it's a roof type that we can't utilize. There's, septic lines here that would really make trenching impossible. There's a lot of variables to that, but I would prefer that at least my site surveyor, if I can get that information relayed, go out and actually start, get the measurements, take all the pictures, so that we can at least know whether that's an option or not. They're checking the integrity of the roof, all those different things. And feel free to jump in here. I'm not, today's not looking at a site survey report training. It's more for a scope of work. So a lot that you can see and get familiar with. Going back to the scope of work, then I'm going to say, what are other things I can consider if this deal hadn't canceled? How can I improve the pricing? One thing to keep in mind as well with a Sunrun project, your price per watt is based on the efficiency, the EPC of the system. So if I'm going to go do a little research, let me get to the right ones. This is the proposal of how the deal was sold. The 6.65 kilowatt, given 128% offset, and the EPC was $4. Now, on the other one, yeah, it's cool. We're selling a bigger system. You're making up some of your money by, per kilowatt, it's a bigger system, but it's producing less. So the customer's price dropped. It's less efficient. So that hurts your EPC. So the customer's technically paying less money because they're getting less power, and your system takes more hardware to produce that amount of power. Your EPC is going to drop a good bit. And sure enough, on this one, it dropped by 75 cents. So that's a huge difference. Now, getting back to, well, man, that's not how I sold it. I wish I could have that. Sometimes we were just hoping that it could be sold like that, and that's not a reality. What's, other times we can look at, okay, how do we get back to that? Can we actually have them do a second site survey? maybe I didn't need to deny the scope of work, and there's an extra fee to have a second site survey done, but it's worth the time, it's worth the wait. We'll get the customer another appointment and they'll go do that. And we'll try to do it exactly as we were, um, how it was sold. Or maybe it's more efficient, since now that we got to do trenching, to just put the entire system on the other roof if the other roof qualifies. There's options to say, this is a little bit more efficient, but they're trying to put a panel over here. Uh, Whoever built this, should know that Freedom doesn't like to do island panels by themselves. So, maybe they were hoping that this panel could be fit on one of these two roof planes, and, why nitpick getting the design done like that? These are really lenient fire code setbacks. I don't think that's realistic, even with less than 1/3 of the roof being used. That's not a foot and a half, you know, spacing. So you might not even be able to fit all those panels there. So it might be worth just looking, if we're going to use this structure, let's just get them all over here, or if the customer doesn't want to do that, or the trenching, or it doesn't qualify to be utilized anyways, then okay, how do we maximize this roof plane? Or is that design already maxed out? Let me look at it one more time. I'm shocked that they're even trying to put two island panels like that, but that's just, once you start maxing out a roof, that's as good as you think you can get it. You know, can the homeowner do some tree trimming to get more sunlight on these roof planes to help get them the power that they want, and make up a little bit on your EPC as well? There's a lot of things I'm going to try to consider. And, based on how the conversation already went with the homeowner, were they open to tree trimming? Did they say already from the get-go, no way, I'm not cutting my trees? If you're the rep that sold this account, then those things, or should know those things. Then at scope of work, it's a lot easier to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is the best plan of action with all the different moving pieces that I have to account for. A couple other things about scopes of work. When they present them to you, you have 24 hours to approve or deny. If you happen to miss a scope of work and everything's great and the job is what they consider buildable, this is buildable. It's 281 is not in the range where the deal is worth $0, then they're gonna proceed with it if you didn't respond. But if you didn't respond or didn't catch it, and all of a sudden want to say, hey, I need to make some changes to this, even though it's buildable, like, I don't want to approve it as is. If a scope of work has proceeded after that 24-hour window, there is a $500 post scope of work fee. So you definitely want to stay on top of your projects. They're trying to keep projects moving as quickly as they can without, egregious delays. And they don't want to spend a lot of time and energy already submitting to permits when they got to change the layout or they got to change these other things. That's just a waste of resources. So if we miss one, that fee is intentionally meant to make it hurt so that we don't keep doing that. If everything looks great, then just, click approve. And, you'll have your M1 coming sometime soon after that. That's when M1 pays out, is post SOW approval. And then, if you have questions, things that you're just like, can I get some clarification on this? Or, okay, we need to change something, but what if we change the layout? What if we change the pricing? Those are all things that you can't go into Sunrun anymore and change, because you'll void your original agreement. You have to get everything signed again. And maybe panels have changed, EPCs have changed, adders have changed. You don't want to void your agreements. So, use this chat tool to go in and ask questions. But especially for scopes of work, they have a scope of work team that will do outbound calls, that you can say, okay, how much would the EPC be if we raised it 2 cents? Or, what if we remove 2 panels? Or, can we do both. What are all the different components you want to get into, and they will call you and you request that on the chat. So definitely use these resources to be as informed as you can. And then you can also specify like, okay, I do want to do a change order, but not the one that you guys are saying. You can do a take action, create a ticket, and change order help. Or if you feel like you're doing something wrong, or they change the portal from time to time, then if you're not 100% sure what to do, use that chat. Say like, hey, I need to do a change order, but it looks like kind of they changed the layout. I don't want to submit it wrong. How do I do a change order right now? Or can you help me do it? And they'll help you. So make sure to utilize all the different resources. The better you get at being in the portal, you know being in the files tab, looking at the site survey pictures. Those are all things that even after the site survey is done, I'm going to go look at on a frequent occasion, just to be aware of like, okay, what are we looking at? Sometimes I'll see stuff and I'll be like, oh crap, they're going to need an MPU, but it's too close to the gas main, so we're going to have a relocation fee as well. Like there's things that will happen on a scope of work that I already knew were coming, just because I got better at looking at the photos and figuring it out. It doesn't mean that I can account for everything, but it helps where your project's actually at. You're not counting your money before you have it, or living on monopoly money. So if you talk to a customer, be like, hey, yeah, fingers crossed, hopefully everything's good. It helps you set the expectation and have less surprises with your customers. And that's probably the last piece I want to mention is having really good communication with your customers. Once you approve a scope of work, or screenshotting a picture of the layout of the panel, saying like, hey, here's the final layout, everything's good to go. If you're worried about it, maybe even send it to them before you approve it, and they're like, hey, yeah, we're not cool with that, that's ugly. Or we talked about no panels on the front of the house. What are your options at that point? Okay, it's definitely worth getting a site survey done on this other roof plane. So hopefully a lot of information that you can utilize. Obviously, feel free to reach out if you have projects, but the more self-sufficient you can be, the more you can catch things quickly, avoid delays, and do your best to get paid the most potential amount that you can.